Good afternoon. My name is Tamara Hunter, and today is the second show on April the 10th, 2020, the Service Hero Show, 365 Days of Awesome, Celebrate Success Through Service. And we have a very special show. In fact, I haven't been going with two shows in a day, except for today. I did, and let me tell you why. It is because of this man. He is truly a service hero. And when you have an opportunity to listen and hear what it is that is doing, you will understand it. And right now, he is at a hospital. So if you hear bells and you hear overheads, understand he is on the front lines of something that is happening throughout the world. We call it COVID-19 coronavirus. Dr. Lance Patak.
Patak, yes, correct.
Patak. Dr. Lance Patak came up with, and back in the 1990s, who would have ever thought, and we were just talking about this, and we're going to talk about the evolution of what it is that is so incredibly exciting that he is involved in. But he saw a need back in the 1990s, and today, 2020, it is ever so relevant. And so what we are going to do, we're going to talk about it, and then I'm going to ask each one of you to be the service heroes that you are to help make something happen so that we can change the face of the outcome of what many are dealing with right now in ICU rooms throughout the world. Welcome, Dr. Patak.
Hi, welcome. Sorry, it's just making sure that wasn't urgent. Appreciate it.
You know, and everybody, Dr. Patak is at the hospital in Seattle, and if he is called away, we're going to let him go and understand that we can always revisit at another time. But you know, this is so relevant, and the timing is such that we wanted to get live and go live with this information as soon as possible. So that's why the double header of the Service Hero Show today. Let's bring everybody up to speed, Dr. Patak. You are not only a doctor, you started as a nurse's assistant, and then you became a nurse. Then you went back and you have a master's in business, and now you are also a practicing doctor on the front lines. Yeah. Let's go over that.
Okay, sure.
I mean, that's an interesting combo. Not everybody can say, but there's a method to the madness here, and it has everything to do with the relevance of today.
Yeah, no, I never knew that I was going to become a physician. When I pursued my job as a nurse assistant at UCLA, I was pursuing a nursing degree at the time because I was inspired to pick up nursing. In any case, I was, making a bed in the ICU, in the cardiothoracic ICU, and 2 beds down, there was a lung transplant patient who had been on a ventilator for quite some time. She had a trach in place, unable to speak, and she was struggling to communicate with the person next to her, as a speech-language pathologist, who gave her a sheet of paper with the alphabet on it. She was being asked to spell something over and over, and I thought, let me just go over there and help her. If I can just get the first few letters or so, I can make this out and make her stop having to spell this, whatever it is that she's trying to spell. But I was watching her go through those letters, and none of it was making sense. So I decided to write down, about 10 different things that I thought were most common that she would want to communicate. Showed them to her. She pointed to her daughter. She wanted to know where her daughter was. And she pointed to go back to bed. She wanted to get out of the cardiac chair that, she was sitting up. So I was like, well, what are we doing at this alphabet? Why are we, is it possible to confine a finite number of words on let's say a 2-sided dry erase board or something? I was thinking a clipboard at the time, because if patients can write legibly, you'd want to graduate and just write,
Okay.
So anyways, we thought, well, let's just maybe print all this on a clipboard and then, make this as a communication tool. In any case, that night, my partner and I, we made this communication board at Kinko's, and I brought it back the next day, and I got 2 thumbs up, and the patient, and I wanted to this kind of become the standard of care, but I was then referred to the director of evidence-based practice, and she looked at this and said, I mean, this makes a lot of sense, but we don't know if that's actually what works and what the patient needs. So why don't we set out to do a research study and figure that out? So science and research was definitely not something I was looking to do. I just wanted to solve the problem, but I was willing to do the research to figure it out. So our methods were to, take a communication board prototype, and we went to a panel of experts with 80 years of ICU experience, got the consensus of what everyone agreed should be on that board. And then we approached patients that had been intubated for at least 2 days. So they, we were able to accumulate some experience. And then we approached them within 24 hours of that tube coming out. Okay. So they had the greatest recall, but they were also able to talk to us. And so we, had these surveys. There were audio taped interviews. They looked at the board. They gave us feedback on what to add, what to take away, what to make different. What was very important was that to be lightweight, because they're so weak that they can't, they're reclined like this, but they're so weak that they can't really lift anything. If it's not sturdy, if they hold one end of it, it'll flop over like a piece of paper.
Right.
So you can't just have a Xerox piece of paper out there, because you have to have something that you put it against. And if what you put it against is heavy, then it's not going to work because they can't lift it up to see it. So, there's all these human factors that have to go into something so simple as a pair of sandals. But if you don't get all the human factor user requirements correct, what you're going to do is you're going to introduce a product into the market that's going to teach all the providers that this doesn't work.
Right.
But if you get human factors correct, then you're going to teach the providers that it can work. So it's really important to actually have all those human factors down. In any case, the clipboard didn't work because we couldn't find a clipboard that was lightweight enough. So if a patient can write legibly, you can get a clipboard from anywhere. It doesn't have to be printed with EasyBoard content. We went through multiple iterations of the EasyBoard, and coincidentally, 2 beds down from that one patient, we had another lung transplant patient who was a long-term resident of the ICU, also trached. Her husband owned a printing company and City of Commerce, and he became our first manufacturer. And he printed actually the first commercial grade EasyBoard, which was made of foam core, super lightweight, but sturdy. And then, we added some color. We had some friends from the art center in Pasadena put it together and kind of make it graphically make sense. But it's gone through multiple iterations, and the final iteration today it's a little bit bigger. The font is bigger. We got rid of all the red letters. There is some red in the pain scale here. We have it available in multiple languages. So this one's in Spanish. So the patient can see everything in Spanish, but also you can see what they want to communicate in English too, just below it. So the patient's able to be specific about where they're having issues with their body and describe their symptoms, describe where it's at, and describe their pain. We also partnered with, so when you do this type of work, you start to kind of like get centralized with all the other people that are doing work. And one of the people I met along the way was Dr. Maribeth Happ, and she had actually been in the field for about 10 years prior to me entering the space. And this was, 20, 30 years ago. And, she had certainly defined the problem, which was clear, and some other researchers had as well. But then her focus shifted toward how do we implement providing communication tools to critically ill patients in a way that's successful and can replicate that success. So she has focused her research and program in the last 10 years on implementing an evidence-based way to teach providers on how to communicate, because patients wax and wane with cognitive skills, physical dexterity. You wouldn't want to give them a communication board if they can write legibly, because it's limiting, it's constraining. They want, when paper, they will just write and write and write pages and pages. But if they can't write legibly, they need something that's concrete.
Right.
And, sometimes they can't point to the board either, and so you have to hold it for them and say, which row?
Right. And I do have a few pictures here. I have one that I captured from your from your different literature and website, and there, right there, it shows. And when we were talking last night, you were talking about the fact that these patients, they need to have these things there by the bed, because sometimes they're there in the room, but they could be over by the sink. They could be somewhere else. They're not necessarily being used because it might require someone to help. And right now, today, on April the 10th, right during the corona, virus situation, and you currently have these easy boards in one way or another, either an app or the board themselves, in about 4,000 of the 5,000 hospitals, correct? In the United States,
we've had at least 4,000 of the hospitals order the board. We're the standard of care in about 1,000 of those hospitals, though, like on a routine basis.
Okay.
But certainly, there's always change in administration. This person who knew about it is no longer working there. Now someone else is working, so they've disbanded it. It's just not part of or incorporated into the standard of care anymore. So it's really important at this point in time to increase that awareness. Make sure people realize that these patients who are critically ill, they're intubated. This is the most important time in their life. If there's ever a time in their life that they want to communicate, it's when they might die. And to not be able to do that is definitely anxiety provoking, and why these patients require heavy sedatives, to keep them from rattling the bed and tearing and pulling or making gestures. And it's also very important to just, from a humanitarian standpoint, find out what these patients need instead of playing charades or imposing and thinking that what they need. I've got piles and piles of quotes from patients, but one patient said something in particular, and I have it memorized because I'll never forget it. He was actually a producer, so he was very verbose. His tape I think I needed 2 cassette tapes for him. But he said, even if I didn't use it, I could wave it and say, I matter. I have a stake in this. It's not about you acting on me. It's about me telling you what I want. And I thought, well, that's brilliant, because if I have this board, it's like it creates a barrier between you coming in the room, having an agenda, you have a dressing change to do, a bath that you want to give at 4 a.m., and I get to say, stop. I don't want a bath at 4 a.m., come back later. Whatever it is, so I think it's really important. And they've got bundles that the critical care environment have looked at incidents of delirium, and they've realized that this sedation that we use in ICUs to keep patients comfortable, it has a high correlation and even cause effect to delirium. And delirium is a major problem. It causes increased morbidity, mortality, lengths of stay. It's extremely expensive. It can be as high as 20% of patients in ICU.
Right. So so let's make that clear.
Yeah.
This is actually because truthfully, every life matters. Every life matters. But in so many of the situations, it's a dollar and cent situation also. It's the numbers also. And right now we need to look at this. The fact that if someone is being put on a ventilator, and right now that is the standard of care with so many of them that are going into the ICU that are having problems with the coronavirus and the COVID-19, it is affecting the lungs. So they're ending up with some kind of a mechanical machine that is breathing for them. Then, and you have someone that was relatively healthy or healthy, all of a sudden they're not. They're in the ICU. It's happening, and it's not like they were prepared for the fact that they're not going to be able to talk. They're scared. They don't, and now even the fear is becoming that much stronger, because every day that this is going on, people are like, am I going to get it? And if I get it, how bad is it going to get? And then if you're going in there, people are afraid of this. And so then they're there. This is happening, and that panic that then has to have a level of the medicine that's being prescribed for them, as you're saying, it's going to relax them a bit, but it's relaxing them to a point where, and they're out of it, if you will, so that the percentage of them coming off of the machine goes down.
Yeah,
And,
so you're
and
absolutely right. It suppresses respiratory drive and it can prolong the requirement for mechanical ventilation. Absolutely.
And so to be able to do something as simple as keep your mind about you and be able to be in control of your existence at that moment in time. Yes, you may have more pain. Yes, you may be more aware. However, you're aware, and if we can let people know that this is out there right now, and ask the question, why is it possibly not at every bedside right now while these patients are being seen and are being put on these machines and these monitors? Or, I'm not a medical person, guys, so bear with me, but
Yeah.
the fact that they're in the ICU, they are scared, they're sick, they're in pain, because this is supposed to be a very painful situation. Yet if they can keep their wits about them and have less medication going into them, their odds, there are percentage of getting through it and living through it is higher. Don't we want to help them live? I mean, it's that simple, and
It is very
and to have it be something. And when I saw this, because Mikey Adam Cohen, my friend, is the one that introduced me to you, and he said, Tam, you need to talk to this doctor, and he needs to get his message out there right now, because the science is there. This is patented.
Oh, the
have
science has been there for 20 years. We have worked. I mean, there's a team. There's a forum of task force members that have worked tirelessly from every angle to try to incorporate the standard of care to include communication. When I walk into a room, the very first thing I need to do is approach that patient and say, is there anything since the last time I left this room that you'd like to communicate with me? And if the reason you're not doing that is because they can't communicate with you because you don't have the tools necessary to help them do that, then you're falling short of providing what that patient needs. If you can't take a blood pressure because you don't have a blood pressure cuff, you got to get a blood pressure cuff. I mean, being able to communicate with the patient is as standard of care as taking a temperature, getting a heart rate, taking vital signs. And our campaign is that communication is a vital sign, and it should be assessed with your vital signs. If a patient can't communicate with you, there's a problem. And if you're not providing them an effective means to do that, you're falling short of providing the standard of care. I mean, let's call it a baseline threshold, anything upon which is acceptable. Not providing them an effective means to communicate and then sedating them as an alternative to doing that is detrimental to them. Absolutely.
So is there anything else? Okay, just, is there any other way besides pencil and paper, dry board, charades, anything like this, that a hospital could choose beyond the easy board?
Yeah, so I mean, I care more passionately about the category getting plugged into the standard of care than our products getting distributed. Our mission is that every patient have that dignity to be able to communicate and get their needs met and optimize their outcomes. We provide tools that work, and we've worked on making sure our tools work for two reasons. A, the patient deserves to have a tool that does work. And B, we don't want to reinforce to providers that the category itself doesn't work. We don't want to train providers by experience that providing a communication board doesn't work simply because I'm providing them a communication board that doesn't work. And there are some that don't work. They'll crowd with a whole bunch of pictures. Maybe the font is too small, and so patients can't see it. And so, it's just teaching people and reinforcing an action that is counterproductive. So, I digress, but, remind me again, what was the question?
The question is that I wanted to just make sure that, okay, if it's not your easy board, there are some others. And so what you're doing right now and why we are going live today is that your big message is if you don't have an effective way for that patient that right now is going on a ventilator and is being there, a method of being able to communicate through our typical way, through our voice, if that's being taken away, if they don't have a way for this person to communicate, you're out here saying that is something we need to be aware of today. We need to make sure that those patients that are going into all of these ICU rooms and they're bringing all these ventilators in and they're finding all of this equipment and they're finding the masks, they're finding the gowns, they're finding all the things that they've been lacking. We need to also put on that list right now the education or the ability for these people to keep their dignity and be able to communicate their wants, their wishes, their thoughts, their desires, their needs with those that are taking care of them.
Right. And there's two things I want to say to that. So first of all, there are situations where a critically ill patient is hemodynamically unstable. They require medications, even sometimes paralysis, to reduce and minimize to an absolute minimum their oxygen requirements so that their body can completely rest. This is not someone that you're going to be communicating with because they're completely put out. Medically induced coma is one way of hearing about this kind of thing. A lot of these patients have to go prone and to be tolerating being intubated and prone. Obviously, this is not a situation where you have to communicate or should be expected to communicate. But before that patient deteriorates to that point, they've just got respiratory insufficiency. We want spontaneous breathing trials, spontaneous weight trials, turning off the sedation, assessing their ability to breathe on their own. Well, during that period of time, you got to let them communicate. Otherwise, that's not sustainable. You have to turn the sedation back on. And why turn it off in the first place if you're not going to keep it off? And if you can keep it off, keep it off. Now, that patient that does have to go prone and get paralyzed and can't communicate, when they do get better, the tube doesn't come out right away. There's another transition period where they're awake, breathing on their own. But the tube is there to give a little bit of extra support to make the lungs breathe a little better. So they need to communicate at that time. So even that same patient, if you took a snapshot right now and 50% of those patients are not eligible for communication, they were a day ago or they will be tomorrow. So, and it's always changing. So regardless, communication tools should be a part of the standard of care and should be at every bedside in the critical care environment. Absolutely. Pre-COVID, let's just call it, we have, 100,000 ICU beds out there today. Well, today our PACUs are converting into ICU beds. They're converting floors into ICU beds. So we probably have 200,000 ICU beds today. 20% of the patients that have COVID, that show up in the hospital, they get intubated. So this is a large number. I think we have about 475,000 cases today in the US, which means, if you take 5% of those patients, there's 25,000 patients with COVID on top of the normal patients that get intubated for other medical problems and surgeries and things like that. So we're definitely overwhelmed with the demand and trying to not only provide these resources at no cost. We'd really like to get these resources at no cost because we don't want cost to be a barrier, because we want patients to get what they need. But at the same time, those hospitals that can't afford it, please purchase them. If you've been buying from us in the past, and you can continue purchasing, that helps us provide the resources to those hospitals that can't, so.
And that was one of the things, and you were talking to me last night about the urgency of this. You're about getting it to where it's needed right now. So if you need to ship them out there and they need them, you want to be able to get them to where they're going to be used. And then, of course, if we can find, it's like, okay, if the government will help, if it's companies, if it's some of these foundations, and they'll help with even the shipping or helping with the printing or whatever it may be, let's pull together, because the bottom line is this, is you want them to be, these hospitals to be putting it on the list, and all of these different, ships, wherever these patients are going right now, the park, the ship, the tent, the whatever. They need to have these communication boards, yours or another one that's going to work, something that's going to work. You're out there educating that we need to have this for these patients, and let's put this on the list of as they're providing the gas, the masks, the gowns, all of that.
They should be on the list. It should be on the list.
Should be, and right now they're not, right?
Right. I mean, I've reached out. I'm doing my best. I've reached out to Dyson. Dyson's making ventilators. We would love to bundle our boards. These boards should go with the ventilators. They should go. This is what they're putting patients on tubes. We can also partner with Dyson and get the patients that are on their ventilators also to be able to communicate. We're happy to co-brand with them. We're actually, would love to work with their reps, their distribution channels. That would be great. Getting a shipping account. Shipping is so expensive to ship these boards everywhere. And, we have a GoFundMe. We're trying to raise money to help address our immediate need. We also have this application that, you can instantaneously download. So this doesn't require anything. We've made it available for free. We've got sign-in instructions that allow you to do it. So I'll just kind of show you this application.
Okay, let me take me down. Let me do this. There we go. Okay, so go ahead and show.
So I don't know if you can see it with the glare.
Yeah, we can see it pretty good. Yeah.
Okay. So if I'm scrolling through here on the home page, this is in Vietnamese.
Please explain.
So the patient who speaks Vietnamese can select their message, what they want to communicate. It speaks it out, and it also texts in English and speaks it out in English. If I'm in pain, I can,
Cơn đau của tôi là 7. My pain is a 7.
And, if you're lying in bed and you're intubated and everything, and you're having, let's say,
Tôi bị đau đầu gối trái. I have pain in my left knee.
And, that part of your,
Bộ phận trên cơ thể tôi không thể hoạt động. This part of my body can't move.
So, like, I'm Vietnamese, I'm intubated, I can't talk, and I'm able to, with a few buttons, tell you I'm not able to move my left knee. How important is that?
That's huge. And so I would think, okay, so, I don't come from the medical world. I'm just, I'm just thinking common sense right now. Okay, so I'm thinking, and I work with making sure that people are not alone that are affected by cancer. That's my nonprofit. That's what I do. That's how I think. So I'm thinking right now, there's a lot of isolation going on. You've got a lot of people that are scared. You've got people that are now being put into ICUs. There's a lack of being able to communicate if they're awake. Now, they don't have their family member that can be there, advocating for them, like in normal situations. Many times they would be, because right now they're trying to separate that situation. So you've got a situation right now that is setting people up to then possibly have to have more medication. And we know, because you've already shared, that they're getting more of this medication that's going to calm them down because they're frustrated, they're scared. The likelihood of them being able to come out of it and heal through this has been diminished by percentages. And so if we can have the board there available to them, if we can, let's just say that app is really cool, but do they have laptops, or do they have little Chromebooks or whatever? Why is it? I mean, there's all of these foundations that are out there that are helping schools right now. They have all these extra machines. They've got them. Why are, let's put that on the list also. Let's get some Chromebooks out into these ICUs. And so that way they can then be pushing, and they can have in their native language. And then so that those that are helping them coming in can understand what is being said. I mean, that to me just makes so much common sense.
I know it does, yeah. And, we've partnered with pharmaceutical companies in the past that provide medications in the ICU. They've co-branded our boards and delivered them at no cost to patients to kind of help, distribute the opportunity, because we really, I mean, when you take all barriers down, even if we give them away for free, you still need to change practice. Like, you still need to get into the mind of that nurse who's walking in. And listen, they're all extremely busy and they're all amazing. And the best nurse out there, if they don't have a communication board, their best move is to be empathetic and sedate that patient. They're not doing it out of like neglect. They're doing it because they have the resources available to them. You know?
Exactly, and let's make that clear, because and you know, and you have stories, and it was really interesting. I read one today, and I thought how appropriate. I knew that we were going to be going on live, and it caught my attention, and it was a story about this ER doctor talked about one of the first patients that he had, a COVID patient, and he had to send this patient on to ICU, and the patient was scared, was looking at him and saying, basically, am I going to make it? And he was assuring him that he felt, yes, you know, and he started going in, and they became friends, and he was like a cheerleader. Hey, let's keep going through this. He actually was taken off the ventilator. He actually is now, you know, he's a survivor. And then the doctor was talking about how, thank goodness, he is, but how many they've now lost in that 3 weeks that the one patient was in the ICU. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is so relevant.
Yeah.
This is happening everywhere in the world right now. People are affected by this. And you first were attracted to do something about this back in the 1990s. How would you have ever thought, could you have ever in your wildest dreams ever thought that you would have a solution that you decided? You actually took 2 years off of going to school for a medical degree to then go back to business, or to go to business school, that you could be responsible with this, and because it's become a passion, right?
Sure. Yeah. You know, the whole idea about, you know, whether or not we were going to just do this as an academic project or not, I thought, well, literally the comment was, you know, if a patient 20 years from now is going to be able to use this board, it's going to be because there was a sustainable business behind it. I'm like, okay, well, let's create a sustainable business. And you know, I wanted to make them cheap and affordable, but, you know, that doesn't create, you know, necessarily a sustainable business. So we had to get margins that allowed the business to be operational, could pay employees. And, you know, half of the things I thought were the right thing to do, they were the wrong thing to do. But the business school helped me tease some of that stuff out. And I think we did create a kind of a nice, small little business. And it's really just had a niche market in helping patients communicate. What's interesting, though, is that, you know, our communication boards, because they're available in multiple languages, they started being used for non-English speaking patients on the floor. So the patient can speak, but the provider doesn't speak their language. And so they go in the room, well, they've got access to 100 words and phrases, and they can say, you know, this is what I want. And so we realized that, you know, the nurse call systems out there, they don't have bilingual capability. And so that's another solution. So we developed a multilingual nurse call communication system that allowed patients to communicate and get their needs met and send the message to a phone. And this is something that we're in the process of launching. But it's just this evolution of products and really trying to address the gaps in clinical care, drive efficiency, empower the patient, put them in control of the communication, put them in control of the care, making sure charades aren't happening, whether it's on the floor and you don't speak the language, or you're in the ICU and you're trying to guess. And, you know, I just want to mention a few other resources that are out there. It's really important.
Okay.
So I mentioned Mary Beth Happ in her educational curriculum. She's made access to this curriculum at no cost as well. And I believe there's 6 sessions, 10 minutes, I forget. But if you go to Speaks2, SPEACS2, Ohio State University, she's made this curriculum available at no cost. New York Presbyterian, Joel Burning, he helped develop a spiritual care communication board so chaplains can talk about end of life using a communication board. And we've licensed his work, and we've conformed that to the Easy Board standard of care, and we're making those boards available as well. We also have the spiritual care communication app that's going to be coming out next week. So we're we're getting all the products out there. We definitely need help. You know, a shipping account, a pharmaceutical company with reps, a ventilator company, anybody that can help us with distribution and manufacturing, or to help us reimburse some of these costs for giving these boards away.
And you know, okay, so I'm calling upon my friends, and I'm calling upon those people that know people, because you guys know who you are. Wink, wink. That we're only 1 or 2 degrees of separation here to making this happen now. And I keep going back to, what if it was you? What if it was your loved one? What if it was someone that you loved so much, and they were there, and you couldn't be there because you could read their body language. You could see what they were thinking in their eyes, but that has now been removed. You can't be in the room with them. So you have to trust.
Restricting visitors, you're right.
Yeah, you have to trust that their opinion, that their desire, their needs, their wants are going to be taken care of. And if they're not, how are you going to feel about it? Let's not let this happen. So what we need to do, and I go straight to the top, guys. I'm thinking this needs to be on the list of all of the must-haves, that they're like, okay, you know, because I mean, we get the daily briefings. Anybody that wants to turn on TV, you see it everywhere, you know. It's like, okay, this is what we're doing, this is what we need, this is, you know, these are the numbers, yada yada yada. We need to make sure that those people that are being treated with respect, that they can be a part of their own care. We understand the ones that have to be put into, you know, an induced coma situation. We understand that, but that's only a percentage, and they have up until that time, and then hopefully coming out of that time. And the more we can avoid more medication, it's just like with, you know, this common sense. If we don't have to use as much of the medication, because they're not as stressed and they're not as scared, they can communicate, our percentages will of people making it through this can increase. And it can be a numbers and cents situation. I mean, that's the way the government works. And I mean, I'm not saying that in a bad way.
Yeah.
This is about life, but let's just be real. There's no down here. There's no, you know, this is why we went live, the Service Heroes show, on a special time with Dr. Patak, because it's like, this is a no-brainer. We need to, as citizens of the world, need to stand up and say, we have every right to have an opinion in our own care. And if I can't talk because I've got something that's going to save my life right now, I can still communicate because of some simple tools. And okay, so let's just say the boards.
Yeah.
You know, they can't be that expensive to produce, right?
No, they're not that expensive to produce, but you know, if you look at the supply chain, they have to be made and manufactured. Right. If they come with a marker, you know, they have to be shrink wrapped, otherwise the marker gets lost. And you know, so there's an assembly process.
Sure.
And then when they're shipped, then they have to get warehoused, and then they have to be repackaged and then shipped again. So there's a handling process and a storage thing. So there is some cost to it. The real cost is shipping. So I mean, really, for every patient to get a board, it's about $20. So if you were to donate to our campaign $20, that would get one board a patient, one patient a board. And we want to increase the number of languages on our app. We've received requests for, you know, Italian, Burmese, all sorts of languages, and we have 10 on there right now. We picked the most common 10. We did not anticipate the COVID crisis, but we would love to rapidly increase the number of languages. That requires translation of the text, female and male interpreter voices being recorded and being embedded into the app. And so every language we increase by is like another $2,000 to $3,000. And that also takes, you know, a 2-week turnaround time. So we have to act now if we're going to address this issue. And we need help. We just can't do it. We've already started. We took the right action. We made the resources available at no cost, which means we need the next action to come from you guys. And hopefully it will. And if it doesn't, we'll survive. But, you know, the more that comes in, the more people we can help.
and the more people that will be living in the end. And that's the thing I really want to stress here. I really want to stress this is about life, guys. I mean, how much is a life worth?
Yeah.
I mean, they're priceless. And for a board for $20.
Yeah.
This is a no-brainer. And we need to put our thinking caps on. Amy, thank you, Amy Morrison. She said that she's got a company. She said there's a company in my area that make ventilators. Great. She's a go-getter. Amy, I bet you're on it already. Let's contact them. There's Mikey got you to me. Thank you, Mikey. Let's. I'm all about. Let's get you the national, news media. Let's get you interviews. Let's get this known, because the bottom line is this: is we need this on that list of the most.
It breaks my heart when I'm watching, CNN or whatever news channel, and I'm watching the same dialogue over and over and over. It's ventilators, it's tests, and it's so circular. But let's just get one more layer in. There's a person in those beds. I mean, right now. I mean, if we just took that moment of silence, I know it sounds so whatever,
no,
cheeky.
We do that. No, we do that every night in our chat. So we take a
moment of silence and realize right now there's probably 100,000 patients right now that are intubated. Very few of them able to communicate or have a communication tool. And you, Tamara, are a gatekeeper. You are a gatekeeper opening that door for all those patients in those beds right now to get this resource. And if not them, the ones after them. And when this COVID crisis is over, if we can actually use this momentum and change clinical practice, all those patients after the COVID crisis will start to get the standard of care and have reduced delirium incidence, have reduced sedation exposure, increased mobility. The number of physical therapists, I had a physical therapist that approached me at the last conference where we presented. And, her name was Nicole. I'll give her a shout out. She said, every time I walk in to do physical therapy on my critically ill patients, the nurse tells me to go away because they just finally got them settled. And so I have to check a box deferred. And the whole theory is that if you wake them up, they're going to get so restless and uncomfortable that they have to get sedated again. Well, guess what? There's no communication tool in this hospital for these patients. That's not part of their standard of care. So even their mobility is being deferred. So, we talk about reducing morbidity and mortality for these patients. It really starts with giving them a reason to not need sedation, which is the ability to communicate and get their needs met. Reducing that sedation is already in the protocol. Every day, they're going to turn it off. They're going to see if these patients can breathe and awake. That's fine. We don't have to fix that. But when they do that, in order to keep that sustainable, we've got to give those patients a means to communicate so they can keep the sedation off, unless it's required from a hemodynamically situation or respiratory situation where you really have to minimize the oxygen requirements.
Right. And that makes sense. And I mean, we'll take that, that makes total sense. However, it's all those others. And it's like you said, before they get to that point, there could be a time that it would have been appropriate. And then hopefully when they get through that point, then I would think, okay, again, common sense in my mind, in the Tamaran language, I'm thinking right now, okay, they have had, they were in a medically induced coma. Thank goodness they're coming out of it. Now, if they can take the levels of the medication up even a percent, to less, because of the fact that they feel like, okay, I can talk now. I was aware, but I was asleep, but I was aware. Now I can actually communicate what I'm thinking, and so that I don't have to be as I don't want to say doped up, but basically, I'm not having to get as much medication. The odds of them being able to come out faster, living, I would think would be increased.
It is. I mean, let me just give you a couple examples of misunderstanding. So in our last conference, I was hearing stories by some of my colleagues. This patient kept reaching up to his mouth and they would pull his hand away because they thought I was going to pull the tube out. And he just kept doing it. It was like, just would not give up. So eventually they paralyzed him and kept him from being able to move at all. Sedated him, increased the sedation, then paralyzed him. And then, 2 weeks later, he finally gets, the opportunity to do this because the mom is begging, please, I will be responsible. He really wants to, and he pulls a hair out of his mouth. And so for weeks, you're paralyzing and sedating your patient. This one woman, she's trying to mouth around the tube, and she's saying, and they keep giving her pain medicine, but she won't stop saying. And so they escalate the pain medicine. They give more and more and more, and they get the pain consult team to come in, and they escalate her drips. She finally gets a tube out. Why were you in so much pain? It wasn't pain. I was trying to say pants. I wanted pants. I was naked in bed. And so this patient's getting exposed to all this narcotic because they're interpreting her pants around this tube as pain.
Right.
And I mean, just let me read a few other things that the patients have said. I'm burning up and there's nothing they can do about it. My backside is itching me to death. Actually, my whole body from this antibiotic that I'm just frying right to my body with the heat and the fever. Nobody knew. I kept writing the things really small and they couldn't understand it. I knew I was doomed. And they threw the papers away. I couldn't fully write. I was still kind of, shaky. I just couldn't do it. I was trying to explain, but I couldn't do it. And these are quotes. Like this is all extracted from the audio tapes when the patients would communicate. I might try to grab your hand to show you something and try to something 2 or 3 times. It's so exhausting that you just shake your head and say, forget it. If frustration sets in, you want to say, okay, fine, just let me rest. So what happens is these patients give up.
Right. Yeah. And when they give up, we're talking their life.
Yeah, they give up. They don't know if the alarms going off mean they're dying or they're just, they have no idea that it's an artifact or, a monitor that's come off or something. But they hear these alarms. They don't know where their family is. They don't know if they're dying. They don't know if they've had the surgery. They don't know anything unless it's been told to them. And nurses can try to come up with everything, but they're not going to necessarily know what the patient's thinking because none of them are mind readers.
Right. And let's throw it out there in the reality of today. There's a short staff situation because many of the hospitals are overtaxed right now, and some of the medical providers are not able to show up for whatever reason. And so there's less time. They're not getting to know them as much. There's not the family that's able to be there to translate for them because they understand the body language. And so that moment in time, the few moments in time that they do get with the medical people, they need to be able to translate, like, okay, I got a hair in my mouth. I'm burning up and I'm itching. What I want pants. And that's when it was the best of times, if you will. And there was a little bit of time for them to maybe be able to try to figure it out. Now there's not necessarily that time.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here and I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, okay, guys, we need to rally around. Who do you know that we can get this information out there, that then we can actually do something with this now? Because it sounds like we need the accounts, and so that you can ship, because you have product ready to ship right now, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a company, Smith's Medical, even, they've actually developed a trait that a patient can talk with. And it'd be wonderful. I mean, they understand the value of patients being able to talk when they require mechanical ventilation, right? So, I mean, even if we partnered with a company like them, or, basically, if you sell an endotracheal tube, you should sell, a way for the patient to communicate. Like, these things should be bundled, like a respiratory therapist tray that comes with a tube, laryngoscope, and suction catheters, and a communication board. Like, why is that not part of the bundle? It's.
I'm not understanding it either. It's like, okay, it goes back to the stereo instructions, right? You get the new stereo, you expect to get the instructions with it, right? And you're withholding. You're kind of like holding someone's arm, and so that they're not getting the full ability. We're talking human life. We're talking wouldn't you want that kind of dignity for yourself and someone you love? That's the bottom line here.
I'd be terrified if I didn't have one of my communication boards and I was intubated. I would be terrified. I'd be terrified.
Yeah.
I don't know. It would be similar to being underwater, not knowing how far you are away from the surface and not knowing if you're going to be able to hold your breath long enough to get there. Like, that's how it would translate for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you can actually make it to the end,
And, anybody here right now that's watching this, and if you know of anybody that is in this situation or that you're hearing and someone is going, do me a favor and tell them to, I need some kind of a communication board. I need something, and so that they, that they get a chance to ask for it. Totally.
Yeah, if you demand it, then the providers have to bring it, right? You create the awareness through demand.
Exactly. Right? Exactly. Because if we don't know, we don't ask. If we know, we can ask, and we can do this. It's called grassroots movement, and that's what we are known for here in the U.S. And we can actually do this throughout the world, guys. This is a common. This is. It's not common, but this is a problem throughout the world because we are facing a worldwide pandemic. It just so happens that you came up with a solution that, thank you for being willing to, like you said, it's not necessarily where you were going when you started all of this, but you saw a need, and here that need, you have the solution, you have the science, you have all the studies, you have all the documentation, you have everything in place. You even have the boards ready to go. You just need a little bit of help. Okay, guys,
we need a little bit of help.
This is a no-brainer. Let's do it. Let's find ways to make this happen, because I just keep thinking of, you don't know my story, but I'm a 4th-generation, 5 people with cancer, and my mother and my grandfather both passed of it. My mother, when she had really rough situations, and she was a very intelligent woman, but towards the end, she had those eyes. Like, help me. I don't know what's going on. I'm scared. I don't know what's happening right now. And I remember looking at her, being there with her in the hospital, because I was allowed to be with her, and I could translate for her.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking now of my mom in that situation where I couldn't be with her, and she's scared and alone, and that is, to me, it would be so excruciatingly painful, and that is happening today for so many people. You're talking hundreds of thousands of people right now that are in situations that are similar to what my mom was in. You start translating that out, how many people love and support that person that is in that bed. So you start looking at it, we're talking millions of people right now that are some way being affected by this situation. If we can help them have some dignity and speak for themselves, the ones they can, through a communication board or app or whatever it may be, we will give them a higher percentage of chance of living through this. And isn't that life worth making a few phone calls?
Yeah, for sure.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm all in.
Thank you for being the champion, and we really appreciate it. And all the patients downstream that will benefit from this effort. Thank you.
You know what? So let's do this. Everybody, please, hashtag live, hashtag replay. Please, hashtag shared, hashtag called. Let's. Who do you know?
We gotta get this national somehow. We have to find a way to get this national. Like when CNN and Anderson Cooper and all these people, if they even just knew this topic was even something someone. It's like they're not thinking about it. It's not.
It's because they don't know.
They don't know.
They don't know. We know they don't know. We need to have them know.
Yeah, I get it. We somehow need to get over the hurdle. Like this, we should be doing this at every bedside. There's no excuse.
No, there's not. There's not. And each one of you that's listening right now and watching this, I want you to think about someone that you have lost, someone that you've lost, not to this, but that you've lost, that you wanted to help. And in their honor, I want you to be that service hero that you are. Many of you are already designated service heroes. I want you each to say, okay, in honor of that person, I am willing to make a phone call, maybe even out of my comfort zone, because I know someone that knows someone. That's all. And this will speak for itself, because literally we will help them speak for themselves.
Sure. That's true. Giving
It's huge.
voice. Yeah.
Yes. So as we start to close this, Dr. Patak, what would you like to leave us all with right now?
Sure. So, we right now, we need help getting this application increased. I mean, we're out of funds. We need to increase the number of languages for our application so that it has access to patients with limited English proficiency. We need to get easy boards into the hospitals. We need to get nurses and providers aware that there's a training program out there, the Speaks To program, where they can look at these modules online, at home, at no cost, and they can learn how to use a variety of different tools. They need to realize that, when they walk in, they think they're being empathetic. They're saying, squeeze 1 for 2, squeeze 1 for yes, 2 for no. But the provider that just walked in before them may have said, squeeze 1 for no, 2 for yes. And then the one before that said, blink once for one, yes, blink twice for no. And the patient can't keep track of it all.
Right.
This is not standardized care. You've got to be consistent. And you'll learn this type of stuff in the Speaks To program. What seems obvious is not obvious. This is a space that needs a little educational support. This educational support is available. Speaks To online program. Our communication boards, we're making them available at no cost. There's no excuse to not have a communication board at the website. The app can be downloaded. The website is Vidatak, VIDATAK, VIDATAK.com.
Mikey, Mikey is here right now, and he's putting phone numbers. Mikey, can you please put the website in the comments right now? I'd appreciate it. And so what does Lance mean? Okay, so yes, the GoFundMe link. To answer your question, Joy, we also need national exposure. If anybody has contacts with any of the national, hey, we'll take local. You're in the Seattle marketplace, because maybe it could be picked up. But if let's get him some exposure in the media. Let's get this message out there as soon as possible. If anybody knows anybody at the top, at the White House, that has that list,
Dr. Fauci. Dr. Fauci would support it. He just needs to know about it.
There you go. Who knows? Because you know what? There are people that know these people. So who do you know that knows them, or do you know them yourself? Let's make a call, because this is something that cost effectively, it makes sense. We're talking people's lives. The science is there. The patents are there. He owns the rights. He is the founder. He is the creator. We are talking with the man that is saying, let's do it. Let's do it. The time is now.
The time is now. If there was ever a time this became relevant, it's when the whole world is getting intubated.
Yeah,
trying to save their life.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do right now, guys. That's why this is critically important. So before you go to bed tonight, please, please, please do something about this in honor of someone that you love and care about or cared about, because that's what it's all about. It's all about saving lives and those people we love. It might even be yourself.
It might even be yourself.
It may be, yeah. So, you know what? I typically close this out in a certain way. However, I just want to right now, from the bottom of my heart, say how honored I am that you came on. I am honored that you listened and you watched a need, and that I'm in the presence of someone that actually did something proactively and put your life on hold to go after something to serve others. Not many people are willing to do that, and you have. You have. And I am honored to be in your presence and in our small way help to make this happen now. So let's do that, everyone, okay?
Thank you so much. Very touching.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Okay, everybody, I appreciate you. Let's do this, okay? Together, we can make a difference. Together, we will save lives. All right. Bye-bye.